When HOA Karen screamed, "Freaks don't belong here," at disabled children, she thought she was untouchable. She harassed families, filed fake complaints, and vowed to destroy their therapy center. But she made one fatal mistake. She didn't know the quiet woman with the little boy was the state attorney. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. It was a crisp Tuesday morning when Sarah Martinez pulled into the parking lot of Sunshine Therapy Center. As the newly appointed state attorney for the district, she had taken a personal day to bring her 7-year-old nephew Miguel to his weekly therapy session. Miguel had been born with cerebral palsy, and this little center had become his second home over the past 2 years. The Sunshine Therapy Center wasn't much to look at from the outside. A modest single-story building painted in cheerful yellow and blue, with a small playground designed specifically for children with disabilities. But inside these walls, miracles happened every day. Children who couldn't walk took their first steps. Kids who couldn't speak found their voices. It was a place of hope, laughter, and boundless determination. Sarah helped Miguel out of the car, his leg braces clicking softly against the pavement. "Ready for another adventure with Miss Lisa?" she asked, ruffling his dark hair. Miguel's face lit up with the brightest smile. Despite his physical challenges, his spirit was unbreakable. "Yes, Tia Sarah. Today I'm going to show her how I can throw the ball." As they walked toward the entrance, Sarah noticed a woman in her 50s marching across the parking lot with the fury of a tornado. She wore a crisp white blazer, perfectly styled blonde hair, and an expression that could curdle milk. This was Karen Whitfield, president of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. "Excuse me." Karen's voice cut through the morning air like a knife. "Are you the owner of this establishment?" Sarah paused, instinctively stepping slightly in front of Miguel. "I'm sorry, is there a problem?" Karen's eyes narrowed as she looked down at Miguel, then back at Sarah. "There certainly is a problem. This facility is operating in clear violation of our community standards. The noise, the traffic, the types of people it attracts. It's bringing down our property values." Sarah felt her blood pressure rising, but she kept her voice calm. "This is a therapy center for children with disabilities. These kids need this place." "I don't care what it is," Karen snapped. "It doesn't belong in our neighborhood. We have standards to maintain. I've filed complaints with the city, and I'm going to make sure this place gets shut down." Miguel tugged on Sarah's hand, his voice small and confused. "Tia, why is the angry lady yelling?" Karen's gaze fell on Miguel with undisguised disgust. "And another thing, these children make too much noise during their activities. My property values are plummeting because of this circus." That was the moment Sarah felt something snap inside her chest. She knelt down to Miguel's level. "Go inside, Mijo. Tell Miss Lisa I'll be there in just a minute." Miguel nodded and made his way slowly toward the entrance, his braces helping him navigate the small ramp that led to the door. Sarah rose to her full height and faced Karen. "Let me make something very clear to you, Whitfield. Karen Whitfield. And I am the president of the Willowbrook Estates HOA. I have power in this community." "Ms. Whitfield," Sarah continued, her voice steady but with an edge of steel, "what you just said about children with disabilities is not only morally reprehensible, it's potentially discriminatory under federal law." Karen laughed, a harsh sound that grated against Sarah's ears. "Oh please, don't lecture me about the law. I know my rights. And I know that this facility is a nuisance that needs to be removed." "We'll see about that," Sarah said quietly. Over the next hour, as Miguel worked with his physical therapist, Sarah sat in the waiting room and watched the other families. There was Tommy, a 5-year-old with Down syndrome, who always greeted everyone with the biggest hugs. His mother, Janet, worked 2 jobs to pay for his therapy sessions. In the corner sat Maria, reading to her daughter Elena, who was recovering from a traumatic brain injury after a car accident. These weren't just clients, they were a community. A family bound together by love, hope, and the shared determination to help their children reach their full potential. Lisa Chin, the center's director and head therapist, approached Sarah during a break between sessions. That woman outside seemed upset. "Is everything okay?" Sarah looked at Lisa, a woman who had dedicated her life to helping children with disabilities, who often worked late into the evening and came in on weekends, who had refused higher-paying positions at big hospitals because she believed in the mission of this small center. "Lisa, has anyone been giving you trouble lately? Any complaints or harassment?" Lisa's face fell slightly. "Actually, yes. We've been getting noise complaints, even though our sessions are well within the allowable decibel levels according to city ordinances. Someone has been filing reports claiming we're violating zoning laws, but we have all our permits in order. The city inspector has been out here 3 times in the past month. What about parking complaints? Those too. Even though we have adequate parking and our families are very respectful about not blocking anyone's driveways or taking up street spaces unnecessarily. Sarah felt her anger building like a slow fire. Has anyone directly approached you or threatened the center? Not exactly threatened, but... Lisa hesitated. There's been this woman who walks by several times a day, taking pictures of our building, our families coming and going, even the children playing outside during therapy sessions. It makes the parents uncomfortable. Blonde hair, white blazer, looks like she could use a good dose of human decency? Lisa nodded. You know her? We just met. And I have a feeling we're going to be getting much better acquainted. That afternoon, Sarah made some phone calls. As the state attorney, she had resources at her disposal, and she intended to use every single one of them to protect this center and these families. Her first call was to the city's licensing department. This is Sarah Martinez, state attorney's office. I need to verify the compliance status of the Sunshine Therapy Center on Willowbrook Avenue. Yes, I'll hold. After 20 minutes of being transferred between departments, she had her answer. The center was in full compliance with all city, state, and federal regulations. Every permit was current, every safety standard exceeded, every requirement met or surpassed. Her second call was to the Civil Rights Division of the State Attorney's Office. Tom, it's Sarah. I need you to research harassment and discrimination laws as they pertain to facilities serving individuals with disabilities. Yes, this is official business. By the time Miguel finished his session, Sarah had a clear picture of what was happening. Karen Whitfield was waging a systematic campaign of harassment against the therapy center, using every bureaucratic tool at her disposal to try to drive them out of the neighborhood. But Karen had made one crucial mistake. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The next morning, Sarah received a call from Lisa. The therapist's voice was shaking. Sarah, I need help. She's gone too far this time. What happened? Karen Whitfield showed up here at 7 this morning with a city inspector, claiming we were operating outside our permitted hours. When I explained that I was just arriving early to prepare for the day, she started screaming at me in front of the inspector, calling this place a freak show, and saying that those people don't belong in a decent neighborhood. Sarah's grip tightened on her phone. Did the inspector witness this? Every word. He looked horrified. He told her that her language was inappropriate and that the center was clearly in compliance. But Sarah, it gets worse. How worse? After the inspector left, she didn't. She stood outside our front door and harassed every single family that came for early morning sessions. She told the Johnsons that their autistic son was disturbing the peace. She told Mrs. Garcia that bringing her daughter here was enabling weakness instead of teaching her to be normal. Sarah felt white-hot rage building in her chest. Did anyone record this? Mrs. Garcia got most of it on her phone. Sarah, some of these parents are talking about finding another facility. They're scared of the confrontation. They just want their children to get help without being attacked. Lisa, listen to me very carefully. Document everything. Every complaint, every interaction, every harassment incident. Get statements from witnesses. And whatever you do, don't let her intimidate you into closing. I won't. These children need this place. But Sarah, I'm scared. What if she finds a way to actually shut us down? She won't. I promise you that. That afternoon, Sarah paid a visit to Karen Whitfield's house. It was a large colonial in the heart of Willowbrook Estates, with a perfectly manicured lawn and a Mercedes in the driveway. Sarah rang the doorbell and waited. Karen opened the door with her usual scowl, which deepened when she saw Sarah. What do you want? If you're here to plead for that freak show center, you're wasting your time. Actually, I'm here in an official capacity. May I come in? Official capacity? Karen's eyes narrowed. What are you, some kind of social worker? Sarah reached into her briefcase and pulled out her credentials. Sarah Martinez, state attorney for this district. And you, Ms. Whitfield, are in serious legal trouble. For the first time since Sarah had met her, Karen was speechless. The color drained from her face as she stared at the official identification. What? This is about that center, isn't it? I have every right to file complaints about businesses that don't belong in our neighborhood. You have the right to file legitimate complaints, Sarah said, stepping into the foyer without being invited. What you don't have the right to do is harass families, discriminate against children with disabilities, or use intimidation tactics to try to drive a legally operating facility out of business. Karen regained some of her composure, crossing her arms defensively. I haven't done anything illegal. I'm protecting our community's property values and quality of life. Sarah opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Let's review what you have done, shall we? In the past 6 months, you have filed 17 complaints against the Sunshine Therapy Center. 12 of those complaints were found to be without merit. 3 were duplicates of previous complaints. The remaining 2 resulted in inspections that found the center to be in full compliance. Karen's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Sarah continued. You have photographed minor children without their parents' consent. You have approached families in public spaces and made derogatory comments about their children's disabilities. You have used language that constitutes harassment based on disability status, which is a violation of both state and federal civil rights laws. That's not true, Karen stammered. I have video evidence, Ms. Whitfield. I have witness statements. I have documentation of every interaction you've had with families at that center over the past month. Sarah pulled out her phone and played a video. It was Mrs. Garcia's recording from that morning, and Karen's voice came through crystal clear. Those people don't belong in a decent neighborhood, freak show, teaching her to be normal. Karen's face went from pale to ash gray. Now, Sarah continued, let me explain what's going to happen next. You are going to cease all harassment of the Sunshine Therapy Center immediately. You will not file any more frivolous complaints. You will not approach families or staff members. You will not take photographs of the building or anyone associated with it. And if I don't? Karen's voice was barely a whisper. Then I will prosecute you to the full extent of the law for civil rights violations, harassment, and intimidation. The federal penalties alone could result in significant fines and potential jail time. Additionally, the families you've harassed have grounds for a civil lawsuit that could cost you everything you see around you. Sarah gestured to the expensive furnishings and pristine decor surrounding them. But I was just trying to protect our neighborhood, Karen said weakly. No, Ms. Whitfield. You were targeting vulnerable families because you thought they couldn't fight back. You picked on children with disabilities because you assumed no one would stand up for them. You were wrong. Sarah closed her briefcase and headed toward the door. Oh, and one more thing. That little boy you insulted yesterday morning? Miguel? He's my nephew. And every single child at that center is under my protection now. The next few weeks were blissfully quiet. Karen Whitfield seemed to have vanished from the vicinity of the Sunshine Therapy Center. Families began to relax again, children laughed freely during their outdoor therapy sessions, and the center returned to its peaceful mission of helping kids reach their potential. But Sarah wasn't done. She had been researching Karen's complaint history and discovered something interesting. This wasn't the first time Karen had targeted a business she didn't approve of. Over the past 5 years, she had launched similar campaigns against a daycare center, successfully closed, a senior citizens meal delivery service, relocated, and a small grocery store owned by an immigrant family, also closed. Karen Whitfield was a serial harasser who used her position as HOA president to bully businesses and people she considered undesirable out of her neighborhood. Sarah decided it was time Karen faced some real consequences. She filed formal charges: civil rights violations, harassment, intimidation, and conspiracy to deprive citizens of their civil rights. Each charge carried serious penalties, and together they painted a picture of a woman who had systematically used her authority to harm vulnerable members of the community. The local newspaper picked up the story: HOA president charged with harassing disabled children's therapy center. The headline alone was enough to create a firestorm in the community. Sarah's phone rang constantly. Other business owners came forward with their own stories of Karen's harassment. Parents from the therapy center called to offer their support and testimony. Even members of Karen's own HOA reached out to express their horror at her actions. The most meaningful call came from Miguel's mother, Sarah's sister Carmen. Sarah, I just wanted to thank you for standing up for Miguel and all those kids. You don't need to thank me, Carmen. It's what family does. No, it's more than that. You know, Miguel asked me yesterday why that angry lady was so mean to him. I didn't know what to say. But then he said something that broke my heart and filled it up all at the same time. What did he say? He said, "It's okay, Mommy. Tia Sarah is like a superhero who protects kids like me." Sarah, do you understand what that means? In his 7 years of life, Miguel has faced so much. Doctors who didn't believe he could walk. Teachers who didn't think he could learn. Kids who stared and sometimes laughed. But through all of that, he's kept his beautiful spirit because he knows there are people who love him and believe in him. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. Carmen continued, "What you did wasn't just about stopping one mean woman. You showed Miguel and all those other kids that they matter. That they have value. That someone will fight for them. The trial made local headlines. Karen Whitfield, represented by an expensive lawyer paid for by her wealthy husband, tried to claim that her actions were simply those of a concerned community leader trying to maintain neighborhood standards. But the evidence was overwhelming. Video after video of Karen harassing families. Recording after recording of her using discriminatory language about children with disabilities. Document after document showing her pattern of targeting businesses that served vulnerable populations. The most powerful testimony came from the families themselves. Janet, Tommy's mother, took the stand and described how Karen had approached her 5-year-old son with Down syndrome and told him he was too loud and didn't belong in their neighborhood. My son, Janet said, her voice steady despite her tears, came home that day and asked me if he was bad because he was different. He asked me if we should move away so we wouldn't make people angry. My 5-year-old child asked me if he should hide who he is to make other people comfortable. Maria Garcia testified about the morning Karen had screamed at her daughter Elena, who was still recovering from her brain injury. Elena had been making such good progress with her speech therapy. But after that woman yelled at her, Elena stopped talking again for 3 days. She was afraid that her words weren't good enough, that she was bothering people by trying to speak. But the testimony that broke everyone's heart came from an unexpected source, Miguel himself. Sarah hadn't planned for Miguel to testify. He was only 7 and she wanted to protect him from the stress of a courtroom. But Miguel had asked if he could tell the judge about what happened, and after consultation with child psychologists and court officials, it was arranged for him to speak privately with the judge in chambers. Later, the judge shared Miguel's words with the court. The angry lady looked at me like I was broken. But I'm not broken. I'm just different. Miss Lisa says different is beautiful, and Tia Sarah says I'm perfect just the way I am. I don't understand why the lady was so mad at kids like me. We're just trying to get stronger and learn new things. We're not hurting anybody. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Karen was found guilty on all charges. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who had clearly been moved by the testimony, delivered a sentence that sent shockwaves through the community. Ms. Whitfield, the judge said, you have systematically targeted the most vulnerable members of our community. You have used your position of authority to harass, intimidate, and discriminate against children with disabilities and their families. Your actions represent not just a violation of law, but a profound failure of basic human decency. Karen was sentenced to 6 months in jail, 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service specifically working with disability advocacy organizations, and substantial fines. Additionally, she was permanently banned from holding any position in the Willowbrook Estates HOA. But the most significant consequence was yet to come. The families of the Sunshine Therapy Center, inspired by Sarah's courage and supported by a team of civil rights lawyers, filed a class action lawsuit against Karen Whitfield for emotional distress, civil rights violations and punitive damages. The settlement was unprecedented, $2.3 million to be distributed among the affected families and donated to disability advocacy organizations. Karen Whitfield lost her house, her Mercedes, and her standing in the community. But more importantly, she had lost her power to hurt vulnerable people. 6 months later, Sarah attended a celebration at the Sunshine Therapy Center. The facility had used part of the settlement money to expand their services, adding new equipment and hiring additional therapists. They had also established a legal defense fund to help other similar facilities facing harassment. Miguel ran up to Sarah on his new leg braces, an upgrade made possible by the settlement, and hugged her tightly. Tia Sarah. Look how fast I can walk now. He demonstrated by walking across the room with more confidence and stability than she had ever seen from him. Miguel, that's amazing. You've been working so hard. Miss Lisa says I'm getting stronger every day. And you know what else? What's that, Mijo? I'm not scared of angry people anymore. Because I know that if someone is mean to kids like me, you'll make sure they can't do it anymore. Sarah knelt down to his level as she had done that first morning in the parking lot. Miguel, you don't need me to protect you. You're strong and brave and perfect exactly as you are. But you're right about one thing, there will always be people who stand up for what's right. Like superheroes? Like people who love you. The celebration continued around them. Tommy was showing off his new communication device. Elena was reading aloud from a book, her speech clear and confident. Parents were laughing and sharing stories of their children's progress. Lisa Chin approached Sarah with tears of gratitude in her eyes. I don't know how to thank you for what you did. You don't need to thank me, Lisa. What you do here every day, Helping these children, supporting these families, creating this community, that's the real heroism. But you saved us. If Karen had succeeded. She was never going to succeed, Sarah said firmly. Because what you've built here is too important and these families are too strong. I just helped level the playing field. As the celebration wound down and families began to head home, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. It had started with one angry woman in a parking lot, hurling cruel words at a little boy with leg braces. It had ended with a community stronger than ever, a legal precedent that would protect other vulnerable facilities, and the knowledge that bullies like Karen Whitfield could no longer operate with impunity. But the most important outcome was sitting across from her, carefully packing his therapy toys into his backpack. Miguel had learned that he mattered, that he had value, and that there were people in the world who would fight for his right to exist and thrive exactly as he was. That night, as Sarah tucked Miguel into bed at her sister's house, he looked up at her with those bright, determined eyes. "Tia Sarah, when I grow up, I want to be like you." "What do you mean, Mijo?" "I want to protect kids who need help. I want to make sure nobody can be mean to them just because they're different." Sarah smiled and kissed his forehead. "Miguel, you're already doing that. Every time you walk into that therapy center with your head held high, every time you show other kids that being different is okay, every time you refuse to let someone else's anger make you feel small, you're protecting other kids who need to see that they can be strong too." Miguel considered this for a moment. "So we're like a team of superheroes?" "The very best kind," Sarah agreed. "The kind that fights with love instead of fear." As she turned off the light and headed toward the door, Miguel called out one more time. "Tia Sarah?" "Yes." "I'm glad that angry lady was mean to me." Sarah paused, surprised. "Why would you say that, sweetheart?" "Because if she hadn't been mean, you wouldn't have known that kids like me needed a superhero. And then maybe she would have been mean to other kids, and they might not have had anyone to protect them." In the darkness of his bedroom, Sarah smiled through her tears. Miguel was right in the way that children often are. Sometimes the worst moments reveal opportunities for the greatest good. Sometimes the people who try to tear us down end up showing us just how strong we really are. Karen Whitfield had thought she was targeting an easy victim, a small therapy center serving vulnerable children and families. She had assumed that no one would stand up to her, that her position and privilege would protect her from consequences. She had been spectacularly wrong. Because she hadn't just attacked a therapy center. She had attacked a community. She had threatened children who were loved fiercely by parents who would move mountains for them. She had targeted a facility run by people who had dedicated their lives to service. And she had made the fatal mistake of doing it all in front of someone who had both the power and the determination to fight back. The story of Karen Whitfield became a cautionary tale in legal circles and disability advocacy communities. But for the families of the Sunshine Therapy Center, it became something else entirely. Proof that they mattered, that their children had value, and that justice was possible even for the most vulnerable members of society. Years later, when Miguel graduated from high school with honors and announced his intention to study law, he would trace his inspiration back to that Tuesday morning in a parking lot when his aunt showed him that sometimes the strongest people are the ones who fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. And somewhere in a small apartment across town, a woman named Karen Whitfield would finish her community service hours and wonder how different her life might have been if she had chosen kindness instead of cruelty, if she had seen potential instead of problems, if she had understood that every child, regardless of their abilities, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. But that realization came too late for Karen, and just in time for all the children whose lives were made better because one state attorney refused to let a bully win. The Sunshine Therapy Center still stands today, stronger than ever, with a small plaque by the front door that reads, "Every child deserves to shine." It serves as a reminder that the light of one person's courage can illuminate the darkness of ignorance and hatred, and that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons or harsh words, but with unwavering love and the refusal to let cruelty go unchallenged. In the end, Karen Whitfield got exactly what she deserved. And more importantly, Miguel and all the children like him got exactly what they needed. A world where someone would always stand up for their right to belong.